Elden Ring Nightreign is finally here. I really love Elden Ring. I'd go as far as saying this is probably one of my favorite games of all time. Top 10 for sure, with the possibility of being a top 5 game for me. And I don't say that lightly, and to make that statement even more dramatic, I haven't even beaten it yet. Actually, I'm only like 30 hours in, and I just finally got through Stormveil Castle. Yeah, I do really love Elden Ring, but it's a game that I've been picking away at slowly for about a year now. It's a game that I play when I'm in between new releases, or when I'm not playing a game for this channel specifically. But anyway, with that being said, when Elden Ring Nightreign was first announced, I honestly thought it was a game that I was going to pass on. The whole concept of it didn't really get my blood pumping. It didn't excite me really in any way. But the closer and closer we got to the release day, the more I realized I wasn't fooling anybody, not even myself. Slap the name Elden Ring on anything and I'll throw my wallet at your face. But yeah, Elden Ring Nightreign came out today, and I've been playing it since the early hours of the morning, which means I have some thoughts that I want to share with you guys. But keep in mind, I didn't play any of the tests. I didn't play any of the betas. My first experience with the game was today, so this is very much a first impressions review. But next week, depending on how this video performs, I'll do a part 2 video where I share my more in-depth thoughts after being able to spend countless more hours with the game. But yeah, hit that subscribe button if you're new here. I talk about video games all the time on this channel. I do day 1 reviews all the time, other video game discussions, but I also launched a second channel where I talk about movies. I just launched the first video on that channel. You should check it out, link in the description. But yeah, enough with this introduction. Let's talk about Elden Ring Nightreign. So first off, what exactly is Elden Ring Nightreign? I was a bit confused about what this game was leading up to its release. I did watch a couple videos, something I don't typically do. If you know me, I like to go into pretty much every video game I play completely blind as humanly possible. But sometimes with multiplayer games like this, I like to have a grasp on the concept of the game before I play it, so the first, 5 hours isn't me learning everything. But with that being said, when I first put the disc in my PS5, I still didn't really know what this game was, and the tutorial is pretty fun, but it's more or less just a tutorial on controls. And then when you go into your first expedition, I think they call it in this game, when you play your first match, it is a clusterfuck. It's fun, but it's insane. It's so fast-paced compared to any other From Software game that I've ever played. It's just you and 2 other players. You can play it solo, but it's meant to be played with 2 other players. So it's just 3 of you running around a map like chickens with their heads cut off, just killing random enemies, killing random bosses, picking up weapons, finding new gear, and fighting bosses. And that might sound simplistic, and obviously there's more mechanics to this game than that, but at the end of the day, that's pretty much what this game is, and that's not me complaining. I actually think it's really fun so far. It's like playing Elden Ring, but in a lot more lower stakes, less serious scenario, if you know what I mean. Like most From Software games are taken pretty seriously by the devs and by the fan base and the players, obviously, where you play and it's usually slower and more methodical, and you're really taking in the scenery, taking in the little tidbits of story that it does give you. You take your gear seriously, you're deciding what you want to level up and what you don't want to level up, you're taking your stats into consideration, you really got to think about where you want to put your points. And then obviously just pacing is such a huge factor in most Soulsborne video games, you know what I mean? Like, you want to take your time, you want to go from one area to the other and just soak it all in. This game, Elden Ring Nightreign, is essentially the polar opposite of that. It's meant for you to just sprint around. It's meant for you to just kill any and everything you see. It's meant for you to just grab new weapons on a whim. And leveling up is very simplistic. You don't really choose what stats you want to put points into. Like, it's not like you're choosing to put stuff into strength or dexterity or magic or anything like that. You just level up, and then leveling up determines how strong all your stats get. But obviously there's different classes in this game. I believe there's 7 different classes to start with, and granted, I played most of my time as the first class. I forget what it's called, but it's the one you play through in the tutorial, and it's really, really fun. And this is a really interesting concept in this game that makes it a lot different than any other Soulsborne game I've played, even though the core combat, the core movement, the core, again, just gameplay is very similar. Other than the pacing, like I just said. But for example, the character that I played as, he has 2 main abilities. One is like a grappling hook, where you can shoot it into an enemy and then pull them towards you. And the other is like this weird pillar of some sort of magic you just shoot at people. And depending on how weak the enemy is, it can just obliterate them instantaneously. If you use it on a boss, it doesn't really do that much damage, but it does do a decent amount, and that's helpful. And again, I didn't really play as any of the other classes, but the people I played with played as other classes, and I was watching what they were doing. I was watching their specific skills, and they all looked really, really fun, and they all looked really, really unique. And every match that I played felt a little bit different because of the different classes that the people I was playing with chose, and that changes up the pacing a little bit. It changes up your strategy. Again, it just changes how you work together, and I found that to be really, really cool. But yeah, as you're going through the map, as you're just slaughtering countless enemies and fighting endless bosses, they often drop loot, different weapons, different gear, different shields, and also like different buffs. So for example, if you kill a boss, they'll drop a pile of loot. And oftentimes they'll drop like, say, 3 different things: a new sword, a new axe, and then also a new, I don't want to say ability, but just an upgrade for your character that you can use for that play session. So for example, you'll be forced to choose between a sword that's 10 plus power stronger than the one you have, or an axe that's 15 plus power than the one you have, but might not necessarily fit the build you're going for. But if you don't want those weapons, the upgrade will be something like plus, I don't know, 15 points to your health or something like that. It's pretty much roguelite in a sense, and that's another thing about this game that made every run that I play feel at least a little bit different from the one that came before it. And that's something I'm a little worried about when it comes to this game in the future is, yes, I'm having fun now, and yes, I just said every run that I did felt a little bit different because of the classes that you and your teammates choose, and also the upgrades and the gear and the stuff that you pick in each given run. But with that being said, the core gist of what you're doing felt almost identical in every single match that I played so far. And don't get me wrong, it's fun. You're still doing Elden Ring gameplay. You're still in the world of Elden Ring. You're still playing a From Software game, and you're playing it with other people. And that alone is a really cool novelty that's making this game a blast so far. But with that being said, I feel like this game is going to get boring a lot sooner than I think the developers hope that it would, and it's going to get boring a lot sooner than obviously I hoped that it would. And this just might be a me thing, but I have a feeling I'm going to love this game for 10 hours, and then I think I'm going to continue to play it for another 10 hours, and then once I hit like the 20-hour mark, maybe the 30-hour mark if I'm feeling generous or I'm just really bored that week, I have a feeling I'm going to put it on my shelf and I'm not really going to ever play it again. I have a feeling when the itch comes to play a From Software game, Elden Ring Nightreign isn't gonna be what I gravitate towards. But with that being said, I can 100% see that not being the case for other people, because like I said earlier, this is a very low stakes, simplistic, arcadey From Software experience. And a lot of people love the From Soft games, but they might not necessarily want to load up a save in the original Elden Ring game. Or they might not necessarily want to play Bloodborne or Dark Souls 3 for the 50th time. This game is really fun to just jump into and get that From Soft itch scratched in a very low stakes, fun, arcadey setting. And for that alone, I think it's a game that a lot of people are going to have fun with, and it's a game that I wish more developers made. You know what I mean? Like, this reminds me of like the PS3 era of video games. Like, you know what I mean? You know when developers were known for certain franchises or very specific types of games, but every now and then they would make something still in the realm of what they're known for, but different enough to just be a really unique and memorable experience without simultaneously tanking their studio or completely changing the fundamentals of how they make a game. Kind of like Capcom in the Resident Evil games, for example. I love Resident Evil. It's my favorite franchise of all time. But every Resident Evil game from back in the day would often have a multiplayer component to it. And that multiplayer component was when Capcom could be very experimental and try something really, really new. And oftentimes they weren't that good, but it was still cool that they were doing that, you know what I mean? Kind of like Naughty Dog with The Last of Us, the original Last of Us game, and the multiplayer component that they created for that, or even like the multiplayer aspect of Uncharted or the Tomb Raider remake, or hell, even Far Cry 3 back in the day had a really fun and somewhat unique multiplayer component to it. And studios used to do that way more often than they do that now. And this game, Elden Ring Nightreign, reminds me of that era of gaming where studios would take lower risk gambles to give us something a little bit different. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, but it still was cool. And us as gamers really appreciated them for that. Studios and developers don't really do that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, how many times has there been a studio that is known for a very specific type of game? Like a studio that makes a single player game, and then 2 years later they make another single player game, and then 3 years later they make another single player game, and we love it. And then suddenly they're like, you know what, we're gonna make one single player game every decade or longer and milk it for all that it's worth in the multiplayer component that we did make. Or we're gonna stop making single player games completely and turn into a live service studio, and we're gonna make one game and we're gonna make that one game for 15 years. Unfortunately, that's what most studios tend to do these days. And I'm just really thankful that FromSoft decided not to go that route. They just decided to make this one short, quick, multiplayer experimental game. And then they're gonna make that Blood something game for the Nintendo Switch, and that's gonna be really cool and also really different. But they've gone on record multiple times of saying they're not a multiplayer studio. These are just two experimental projects that happen to be coming out kind of back to back, but after that they're going back to their single player ways. Another thing I really like about this game is just how visually beautiful the world is, and I know that's just more or less a praise for Elden Ring, because this game is just reusing assets of Elden Ring, but I love that they took what we loved about the beauty of that game, the architecture, and they changed it up a little bit in terms of like the color palette. Like the original Elden Ring was a lot of deep greens, earthy greens, and bright golds, and this game has a lot of like purples in it, and that really changes the whole feel and the vibe of these areas that we've already been to a million times. However, I will say this game doesn't perform all that well. Don't get me wrong, I didn't really experience any major bugs or glitches, and all of the games that I did play, I didn't lose connection to anyone, and that's really, really cool. And granted, a multiplayer game is going to have some frame rate issues more often than a single player game, at least in my experience, but I remember the original Elden Ring game felt a lot more smooth to play. This one, you do notice some juddering, a little bit of frame rate issues here and there, but again, it's nothing that ruins the experience. But yeah, that's my quick and brief thoughts after playing Elden Ring Nightreign for the better part of today. Have you played it yet? If you have, let me know what you're thinking about it in the comments down below. And once again, depending on how this video performs, I'll make a follow-up review sometime in the next week or so, where I will talk about my much more in-depth thoughts after I spend a lot more time in the game. So let me know if you're interested in that video. And once again, consider subscribing if you haven't already. And thank you for watching, especially if you watched this far.